Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who's fully prepared for whatever the weather may bring. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, I am. I went shopping. I prepared for the hurricane, all the while unable to get the episode of Always Sunny when they're preparing for the, I believe, hurricane, and then it just turns out it's going to be a light drizzle.
Oh,
it's still in my head the whole time.
Can't you just find it on wherever?
No, it was just more so like as I was like buying stuff, because my head really does go way into like, do I need a generator? And it's like, no, you don't need a generator. You're not even going to lose power.
So we should
knock on wood.
We should make clear this is part of our prep,
yeah.
Right? We're planning to not come into the office on Thursday just in case things are bad. So we're recording this Thursday show late Wednesday night.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
And as always, on a Wednesday night, we have a hard out time. So we'll see how that goes.
Because we have an indoor game.
Yeah.
So we have listener questions to answer. I think, if we run out of time, we'll just bump a couple of questions to the next show. How about that?
We will.
All right.
Sounds good to me.
One thing, I realised we've been kind of making light of the hurricane thing. It actually could be bad. It's worth pointing that out. There are people in much worse path of the hurricane than we are. If you're one of those people, please take care of yourself.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I should clarify is, like South Carolina, I believe Georgia may be impacted as well, and then North Carolina definitely.
Yep.
It's just more so like going to the grocery store in Richmond and seeing all of the water gone as though like we still have water. Like even if power goes out, you still have water. You just don't have hot water.
We're doing the just in case thing, but there are other people where it's definitely going to be bad.
100%. Yeah.
All right.
I've seen my friends living in South Carolina putting up their storm shutters. That's
right?
not a thing I have to deal with.
All right. Shall we get to the questions?
I suppose we should.
Because you're also prepped for the questions.
I am.
Today's first question comes from Zach Lippert, and I'm making sure that I'm the one that asks it because I think you're going to have the better answer to this one. Zach wants to know, what's the quote-unquote best way to get in someone's head during a game? Matt Miazga, third mention from Matt Miazga in 3 shows, seemed to know exactly what he was doing last night. This question came in after the USA-Mexico game by tempting opponents into a reaction. And Marco Materazzi may have taken it a step too far. It's the 2006. Obviously, the thing to do would be to just be better than your opponent, but the mental side is part of the game too.
It is. I would actually say maybe Materazzi didn't go too far because he got Zidane a red card.
He got exactly what he was going for.
I know, yeah. So if anything, he got what he wanted.
Yep.
I think Matt Miazga the same. I would say, first off, it kind of depends on the position, because I realized I was thinking about this strictly as an attacker.
Wait, how to get in someone's head depends on your position?
I think so.
Okay.
Because I think some of the stuff I would advise if you're an attacker, like one thing is like just constant movement to frustrate. That doesn't really work with the defense. If you're like, haha, I'm going to run away from you, the attacker's like, well, great, I'm going to score a goal now.
The centre-back just goes for a run.
Yes. So I'm answering this from more of an attack standpoint. But I would say, genuinely, my answer to this is being friendly. It really messes with people. I know it sounds crazy, but like if you're... it happens to me every other game, I'd say. Is like maybe partially is because I'm always paranoid that someone's going to be like, that guy from Total Soccer Show is the worst. So I'm a little bit nicer as a result. But it really does happen that like people will actively try to be aggressive and mean. And if you're just like, hey man, good tackle, they're like, what? Okay. And it makes it really hard, I think, sometimes to really go in aggressively and fight somebody. If you're like, well, he seems kind of like a nice fella.
Okay, so I like that approach.
Yeah.
I really do. I also like my approach, which is to just not respond to anyone all the time and just focus on what you're doing. But I would say that approach works for our level when it's not like real big things on the line. I really feel like when you get to a high level, you need to be Materazzi, you need to be Sergio Ramos, you need to be Matt Miazga. Yeah. I think you really do, to be successful, need to have that extra edge and know how to push it. So can we put ourselves in the mindset of if we were those hyper-competitive people playing at a very high level, what would be the best way to get in someone's head?
I think if we're going to go that route, the answer is just watch a lot of Diego Costa footage. Because I think...
he's the best.
With that said...
he's the best at being the worst.
He is. That's key. And maybe this doesn't really connect with that. I would say he is the best at being the worst. But I would say like there's something to be said for silent physicality where you're not being... like vicious and it's not obvious that you meant like ill intent, but also you're still running into the player, knocking him over and letting him know. But then I think it is...
I dabble in that on Sundays.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then if you do that, worth noting, it's always very important to then be conciliatory if that whistle goes, because that's a good way to avoid a yellow card.
Yep.
For purposes of this conversation, I would say that it's that sort of thing. It's the Diego Costa step on a foot right before the corner comes in. It's basically what you want to do is you want to
make it look innocent. That's the thing. Costa always puts a level up.
You got to toe that line.
I was just stepping there. Oh, and it just happened his foot was there. Oh, isn't this a terrible mistake? That happens every game I play in.
I would venture to guess that Diego Costa has more quote-unquote inadvertent contact with opponent's face than any other player in the world, because it's just a lot of like, oh, sorry, I raised my hand up at the wrong moment. I happened to hit you in the face.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to, but I did. I have to admit to. So I think like just those, it's basically towing that line between innocence and deliberate maliciousness, I guess. That's how you do it, I think.
And I think also the key is it's not just to get a reaction like a punch, right? Which I know Diego Costa goes for somewhere. Sometimes the thing is just to get your opponent thinking about something else, right? Because to be the very best at what you're doing, you need to be fully focused on what you're doing in a soccer game. If you can just get in their head and get them having a weird little conversation with you, or get them thinking about something else, or just rile them so they make more erratic, emotionally fueled decisions as opposed to tactically fueled decisions.
Yeah.
I think that stuff can work.
I absolutely agree, because you and I have both played on teams where people respond to the ref and to the other team, and it always means you're losing the mental battle.
Yes.
If your team is the one that's complaining, yelling at the ref every time, it means you're not focused. It means you're looking, not even necessarily intentionally looking for reasons to like let yourself off the hook, but it means that you're sort of focused on an external factor as opposed to your actual opponent. So I think if you start getting the defender to get him out of the ref, and that wasn't out on me, and that's not a foul, and what are you doing? Then they're more focused on the quote-unquote injustice than they are on actually defending you.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Any like physical things that you would not recommend, but that seem to be effective?
The thing I was taught when I was 12 years old was on a corner kick, you bend over like hands on knees like you're really tired. Right when the corner comes in, you untie your opponent's shoe. The referee rarely is going to see it because they're looking at the delivery and the scrum in the box. They're not going to look at that subtle movement.
That's pretty high concept, though, right? We're not going to see that in the Premier League.
No, but maybe not. But maybe you will, because it will make the defender look down. Because you're like, did you just pull my shoe? And then as soon as they look down, you're away running and you've lost them. There you go. And then what are they going to do? Say he untied my shoe? It's like, no, shoes come untied all the time.
You've got what's the word?
Plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability is exactly the phrase I was looking for. All right, thank you to Zach for that question.
Yeah.
Ready for the next question?
Yep.
It comes from. You can ask it.
I'll ask it since it semi-relates to your beloved baby. Dorian Bettenker says, with the new UEFA Nations League having just started, which group or division would the current U.S. men's national team place in, and how would they fare against their opposition in that group? Worth noting, I sort of did a semi-scientific, basically looked at UEFA Nations League groups were decided based on standings at the end of regular UEFA qualification for the World Cup, not including the playoffs. So
the UEFA coefficient,
yes,
not
exactly,
the FIFA rankings.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So then I went and basically looked at the FIFA rankings at that time to see where the US was after failing to qualify for the World Cup and compared them to the UEFA coefficients.
Oh, so you did some mathematiques.
I did.
I just thought about like how good is this US team?
There we go.
Okay. Here's what I came up with.
I did the exact opposite of that.
The US team, I want to see if my gut feeling matches your math. I put the US as either a high C, like one of the better teams in League C, or a low B.
That is precisely where I have them. Yep.
So if you think of this in terms of teams, teams in Group B would be teams in Group C would be like Scotland, Greece, Norway, Serbia. I feel like that might be roughly our level, because a team in League B that isn't doing very well is Ireland, right? They lost to Wales. That's a team that beat us in a recent friendly.
Yeah. This is where I would say, first of all, two things. Three things. One, I generally agree with what you've said, and you're right. That's about where I put us. Two, what I did for purposes of this was sort of imagine a realistic scenario in which the United States is suddenly playing in Europe, but more so if the U.S. had failed to qualify and then they knew the UEFA Nations League was coming, what would they have done? The answer in my mind would be they would have appointed a permanent manager.
Yeah,
we would have a better understanding of what this team is because we would have to for these games. So I'm not even really thinking of it as the current U.S. team, but the best possible version of the current U.S. team.
Yeah, which is a whole other debate about what that is.
Absolutely.
But I would argue that whatever the best version of the current national team is, we're still in a rebuilding phase, right?
Yes.
Even if we bring back in some of those older heads, you've got like Adams, McKennie, Robinson, guys who do not have a lot of international experience or even that much soccer experience. So you have to peg us as a team with potential, but not a team that is ready to go into League A in the UEFA Nations League right now. I would prefer to see us in League C because we'd have a good fighting chance.
Well, see, here's the thing, though. The final thing I was going to say is that you listed a bunch of the C teams, but you basically listed the best C teams, and that's not how that group would work.
Plus Scotland.
You'd basically be removing You'd only be playing none of those, essentially, because of the way the groupings would work. So the way I had it was the U.S. at the time in the FIFA rankings were between Ireland and Scotland, 26 and 29.
Between a B and a C.
Yeah, basically. And what I ended up calculating it out to was basically we would be right around 24 in Europe, which means we would either be replacing like Czech Republic, Turkey as the bottom two teams in Group B,
League B.
League B, or we would be replacing Hungary and Romania as one of the top teams in League C.
What you're making me realize is that the line between B and C is actually quite blurry, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
I bet there are teams in C who I'd say Serbia actually are quite unfortunate to be that far down.
I mean, Greece as well.
Yeah.
So you've got, and Scotland you mentioned previously. So you've got some in there, but I think what would end up happening if the U.S. were to be in one of these groups, be it B or C, I think C, there's a chance that they get promotion. B, there's a chance that they stay alive. But I think what it would do is it, number one, would force the U.S. and the new manager, who would have been appointed, into playing a specific style every single game. Because with this type of competition, you've got to have that regularity and that repetition so that everybody knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think...
I like how seriously you're taking this.
I am.
As if it's going to happen.
Because I kind of got into it because I realized that if this were happening, I think it makes the U.S. better.
Of course it does. To be competing among the middle of Europe would be great for the U.S. It would be a constant test.
But exactly. But I don't think it makes us better in terms of what maybe a lot of people want is like this free-flowing, very attacking, very skillful technical team. I think it makes us double down on the scrap. I think we are
makes us pragmatic.
I think we are extra scrappy. I think it's sitting deep. I think it's counterattacking. I think it's maybe bringing some CONCACAF-ery to UEFA.
Yeah, we do that now.
Yeah,
thanks to Matt Miazga.
And so that's what I think it would be. But I think it would very much prepare us for bigger tournaments where we would want to perform and advance and make a next level of a round that we've never made before.
Yep.
I think it would certainly help with that.
And for people dreaming of this and realising it's not going to happen, right? We're not going to join the EU or be invited to play in UEFA. There is a long-term goal.
Continental drift can happen, man.
We'd have to wait millions of years. The Pangea Nations League.
Yeah.
We'd have to wait. We can wait a little while. It does seem like there are plans at some point for FIFA to make this a global league where there's a top division that you could aim at being in. Mm-hmm. That's a long way down the line, though.
It is. I'm still not in love with that idea.
Maybe Pangea happens before the FIFA Nations League.
I am so happy that we got Pangea into this conversation.
Like 5 times, right?
Yeah.
All right, before we move on, today's show is sponsored by the fine people at The Athletic.
And George Qureshi.
I actually meant that one of the fines was for George Qureshi and one was for Brooks Beck.
I'll give both to Brooks.
You give both to Brooks?
I'll give like 1.75 to Brooks. George can have 0.25.
There we go.
He's fun.
So The Athletic is sponsoring the Total Soccer Show today, which gives us a marvellous excuse to open up the Athletic app and take a look at some of the stories.
I just want to clarify, Daryl is literally opening the app. It's not. This isn't one of those fake copy reads where the host is clearly not opening the app and not drinking the beer that they're clearly not drinking in the ad.
Honesty in advertising.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I could also advertise fountain water. 9th floor fountain water.
Yeah.
It gets you hydrated.
But have you ever heard that when they're like, I won't say the name of the beer company, but there's a beer company that advertises a lot on podcasts, and there's a few that are like, oh, it's so refreshing. And it's like, I know what it sounds like when you drink a beverage on mic, and it doesn't sound like that because it sounds disgusting.
Well, this is what it sounds like when I read The Athletic on mic.
What you got? Yep, that sounds about right.
But I really was doing it.
And it is kind of what happens. You get sucked into stories, and suddenly you've been reading your phone for 4 hours.
We've had a few quiet moments at the desk, right, when we've both been reading Athletic. What was the story that jumped out at you when you opened it up recently? Because I know what it was for me.
I mean, it was Will Parchman.
Yeah. Parchback.
Yep.
Parchback.
Thank you.
It's the more successful version of Pogback.
Oh, that's not nice.
I mean...
Yeah, Will Parchman returns to rank each and every... MLS Development Academy team from worst to best.
Parchman, ranking all 23 MLS academies. It's almost clickbait, but it's so juicy when you open it up.
It really is.
So we don't want to give away any of the rankings, right? But we do. I will want to say that because there's so many MLS teams and MLS academies, 23, it's quite short in a way, each one, but it's packed with information about what this academy is doing right and wrong, why they are where they are in the ranking, and then a quick highlight of here's the couple of players to look out for from this academy.
Isn't it just one? Doesn't he? I mean, maybe I didn't...
Well, no, there's one spotlight, but then within the body of it, there's a couple of mentions of other players.
Gotcha. Yeah. But I make that stipulation because the one spotlight, I think, was my favorite aspect of it.
Oh, yeah?
Because it's so easy to think of it in the abstract, and making a ranking like this is always kind of difficult. I think he acknowledges that it's not really like a scientific study. But giving you a specific
Not like
name,
your Nations League study.
Not so much. Obviously, that was just math. But it gives you an idea of like, oh, okay, they've got this player. They've got this thing that they're working on or this type of player that they've developed. It just gives you a little bit more insight into the individual academies.
All right, one other story that I like to keep an eye on.
I will only talk about Will Parchman.
Hopefully, you'll have many more opportunities. A story by Matt Pzdrowski, who's a goalkeeper, and it has a title that was made for me, I think. An outsider's guide to understanding and evaluating goalkeeper performances. And it delivers on the title.
And then it was hashtag West Mids, hashtag Wolves, just so it really was tailored to you?
Just tailored straight to me. But it really talks you through like what to look out for a goalkeeper, what they're doing well. And it's things like, it's not giving anything away to say there are things like positioning, balance, footwork, the power step, which is a thing I think is like, my understanding is that that's like the big step you take before you dive. And then there are explanations of what those things are, how to recognize them, and then video examples of good and bad examples of the various goalkeeper attributes. This is a story I'm going to not just read, but I'm going to bookmark for reference so that because we're not as good at evaluating goalkeepers as outfield players, right? Because we just don't have the knowledge.
That is true.
Matt Pzdrowski's story is going to be very, very useful.
All right. I like that a lot. And if people would like to read that or any of the other excellent content available at The Athletic, what can they do, Daryl?
You can go to theathletic.com/TSS September to get 40% off a 1-year subscription to The Athletic. And Taylor came up with this week, the best way to remember the URL is theathletic.com/T,
then 3 S's, and then September?
Yep, TSS September.
There we go.
Or you can click the link in the show notes.
That's probably slightly easier.
Oh, it's also worth pointing out, I think someone ran into trouble with this, I saw it on Twitter. If you don't do the 40% off, if you instead try the free trial, be aware that after your free trial is up, then you will start getting charged, right? I mean, I understand how that can accidentally happen, but just be aware that is what happens.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fair? And there are workarounds for that. I'll say that much.
Well, cancel after the week if that's what you want to do.
There's that too, yeah.
Or get 40% off with theathletic.com
or that.
/TSS September.
All right.
More questions?
More questions. You want to go or you want me to go?
I'll go.
All right.
Okay. This next question is from Elena Jersey, 7-year-old goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Via Ira Jersey, who is not 7 years old. Ira is a Total Soccer listener who is Elena's father.
I have no jokes about Ira's age.
Okay. Because we don't know it.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Why? So Elena asked, I'm assuming Elena asked Ira and then it's being relayed to us. Why is it better for a goalie to bowl the ball to a teammate than throw or bound it to them overhand? This actually is a question for Matt at The Athletic.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll do our best to answer it.
All right, yeah. I mean, I think the answer is that it's basically, if you do that, it's guaranteed that the ball will be on the floor. So,
yes.
And that makes
it easier to receive, right?
Yeah, it makes it almost impossible for you to throw it out too hard, because if that ball is on the ground, theoretically the player should be able to settle it.
Yeah.
So it makes it just that much easier to get the ball under control and moving that much faster.
Yes.
Obviously, it doesn't allow you to cover nearly as much ground as the long throw, but it allows you to, I think, throw it short to medium distances with accuracy or roll it as the situation is. I will say Ederson from Man City seems to be using the roll to get players into better positions earlier. It seems like he's doing that more often than he did in the past. Like, I think.
How do you mean?
Like last weekend, I think he caught a ball, ran into traffic between two players, and I think because people can step in front of, like, they can see you sort of winding up to do that throw.
If you do the overhand.
Yeah, they'll sort of do that little interference. They'll step in front. They'll cause problems. But he just came out and rolled it between two opposition defenders right into the path of, I forget who it was, and then they just turned and went away. So again, it allows you to transition really fast.
When they go high, he goes low.
There you go.
And of course, there is a place for the long throw.
Oh, of course.
But it's to really hit
It's against Algeria when you're Tim Howard.
There you go. That's the only time to do it. I get the impression maybe this question has come to us because maybe there's been a debate between Elena and Ira.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think so.
I think Ira might be hoping that we settle the debate for him.
I wonder who's on which side.
I don't know.
Or maybe it is just a matter of, if you're a 7-year-old goalkeeper, you're trying to figure out the best possible approach. An inquisitive mind.
Yeah. An inquisitive mind breeds success. Yes.
I would say work on both. If you are a goalkeeper who's trying to develop your overall ability, do both.
But if you do have a teammate close by...
Throw it at their face.
No,
hard as you can.
Underarm, bowl it on the floor so it goes straight to their feet so they can control.
And then get mad when they couldn't settle it.
Next question.
Yeah. Next question comes from Ed Ritter. What's going on with the CONCACAF Nations League? Asks Ed. Why does the first round have 34 teams, each only playing 4 games? Also, is there a fair way for Guatemala to enter the competition after it has already begun?
Okay, so we can answer Ed's question.
Sure.
Should also note that Ira, from the previous question, also asked what the Cooligans is the CONCACAF Nations League.
All right.
So we're going to fold these two questions in together. Obviously, CONCACAF Nations League is the CONCACAF local version of the UEFA Nations League, right? But the difference is the UEFA Nations League was all set up using the coefficients that you talked about. They're straight into their 4 leagues, and they hit the ground, go in this week.
Yeah,
right?
and the CONCACAF one was equally well planned and thought out.
I mean, it kind of was. It's just a bit more awkward. Is that fair?
I mean, yeah, except that you saying that sentence the way you said that sentence sort of proves my point.
I think they did the best they could.
There we go.
Here's what's happening.
That is the Daryl Grove equivalent of bless their heart.
Here's what's happening. League A, the top league, will already have the 6 teams from last year's Hex, right? So US, Mexico, all the other 4 teams, they were in there. I know who they are, I'm just not listing them.
Not in that order.
So right. So we're already through to League A because we're the top 6 from last time round.
Which is why we weren't playing qualifiers in this international break, whereas other CONCACAF countries were.
Almost Guatemala's the exception. All the other CONCACAF nations have been playing starting this week and through to November, September, October, November, in a first round CONCACAF Nations League qualifying phase that is very strangely arranged in order to rank the teams into groups A, B, C, leagues A, B, and C.
And I like this strangely more than just going with FIFA ranking or CONCACAF coefficient or whatever that might be.
Okay. So shall I turn it over to you to explain the complicated part?
I'll do my best.
As Ed says, these teams in this, it's like one big league, right? But all the teams are only playing 4 games each. And then
in the qualifying part,
in the qualifying part, and then CONCACAF's going to use that to place them into the different leagues.
Yes,
for the real thing next September.
I may get bits and pieces of this wrong. Generally speaking, I think I understand it. So yes, you've got those 34 teams. They're basically all going to be in one single table, top to bottom, 34. And then but they're divided into 4 different pots. And essentially, I think like if Daryl is in pot 1. He's going to play another pot 1 team, a pot 2, a pot 3, and a pot 4. 2 of them home, 2 of them away. And then at the end of it, you basically look at the table and you can see who is where, and that determines which group or league or whatever it is you're going to be going into.
Yeah, so obviously the 34 teams could not all play each other home and away. They couldn't play each other just once either. Right. It would just take forever.
It would.
So the shortcut that they used was, as Taylor just explained, but I'm like doubling down on it. It was to make sure that you play 4 games, and theoretically, every team is playing a fair representation from the 4 different theoretical pots.
Yes,
right?
you're sort of being drawn into a group, I guess, if you want to say it that way, because you are playing 4 games.
So my question was, why not just, if you've drawn those pots, why not just make those the leagues?
Because the thing is, I think you're not all playing the same teams. Like, I think it's the case that, say, Daryl draws, I don't know, St. Kitts.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that St. Kitts is playing the other 2 teams that you're playing. I think it sort of is all interconnected.
No, but I'm saying if they've already ranked the teams, why not just take that ranking and drop those into the leagues?
I think this is all in response to CONCACAF teams. This is my serious answer. I know you're kind of joking. But,
I was kind of serious.
I think it's because this is in response to CONCACAF countries, smaller countries that don't usually make Gold Cup, certainly don't make the World Cup, them being frustrated by once you're out of qualification, you don't have meaningful games, there's no way to sort of advance up the ladder.
Yeah.
So this tournament is designed to do that. But then if you're still going with your FIFA ranking, it still sort of rewards the bigger teams again. So I think theoretically, this is a way to say the big teams are still probably going to be the ones who get through, but there's chances for other teams to do it.
Do some teams not make it from the qualifying phase to the UEFA Nations League group phase?
I mean, the UEFA Nations? No, they definitely
don't. No, CONCACAF.
Yeah, you said UEFA. I was very confused.
But CONCACAF. So this first qualifying phase, will all the teams be ranked into various leagues?
Yes.
No one gets knocked out in this phase.
Gets knocked out.
Okay, so everyone still gets to play.
Yes, exactly.
And you'll get teams in the lower end of equal stature having competitive games against each other and the possibility of promotion relegation.
Yeah, so it still lets you play stronger opposition, but then at the end of the day, if you get blown out, as some teams have, I forget who Canada destroyed, but they beat somebody 8-0, I believe.
Yeah.
I mentioned on yesterday's show, Jamaica beat Cayman Islands 4-0, so you get to play those teams, but then if you're the Cayman Islands, you probably end up playing in a league where there is competition similar to your level.
Okay, and then they're going to be into the CONCACAF Nations League in September. The weird part is you got something else to say?
Yeah, I was just going to, and then to clarify, because you said the 6 Hex teams are already qualified. The top 6 teams from that big table, they go into League A, I guess.
Yep.
So that's 12 teams there.
So 4 groups of 3.
Yeah, and then you've Group B, you got the next 16 teams, and then Group C, or League C, excuse me, are the remaining 12 teams.
Got it.
So that's how you split it up.
And then it also applies, to make it more complicated, it also applies to 2019 Gold Cup qualification, right? Basically, the 6 Hex teams are already in the Gold Cup. And the top 10 teams from this qualifying phase also go to the Gold Cup to make 16 teams.
Strangely, the simplest way to explain it. Yes, well done. Yep.
All right, Guatemala. What is going on with Guatemala?
Sure.
Why are Guatemala not involved? And why is Ed asking if they can join later?
I feel like this should have been a way bigger story, and somehow it hasn't been. They have been suspended by FIFA since 2016. There was an investigation into corruption. FIFA, very much Cliff Notes version of this. FIFA demanded that they modernize. They changed the way they were doing some things. The Guatemalan Federation said, "No, we're good," and basically didn't want to comply. FIFA suspended them. They finally came into compliance in late May of 2018, but that was after the registration deadline had passed to be able to participate in the CONCACAF League of Nations. So they missed that. They missed qualifying for the Nations League, the 2017 Gold Cup, obviously, and the 2019 Gold Cup, unless things change.
So they're not going to be in this qualification process. Ed is asking, could CONCACAF just add them next September? And I could see why CONCACAF would want to do it, because even though maybe we don't think of them as a huge threat, Guatemala are among the top, 10 at least,
certainly.
I'd say, nations in CONCACAF. It's one of the better teams in CONCACAF. So it would strengthen the league to have Guatemala in there.
It would. It also, if you're going to go with the they've done their time sort of approach to it, they're now in compliance. It doesn't necessarily make sense to punish them, aside from the fact that they didn't get their paperwork in on time. They weren't able to register. So I think the logical solution, as I think you and I have discussed this already, is you let them into League C.
Yes, but then also it's unfair, right? Because they would be destroying teams in League C.
Yeah, but I think it's the way it goes.
You've got to work your way up, like a Scottish team that went out of business. You got to work your way up from the bottom.
How dare you? But also yes.
I mean, it's just the best example I could think of.
I mean, it's an accurate example. It's an accurate example.
Okay, I think we've answered that question.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information in there. I'm guessing if you zoned out, you probably had to hit the back 15 button a few times.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a big fan of that button.
As am I.
Okay, today's show is also sponsored by Roughneck Scarves. If you've been listening to the Total Soccer Show, you know that we normally do we put out a question to design a custom scarf. We thought it would be good to not do that for 1 week and just remind people that Roughneck Scarf about the actual products in the Roughneck Scarf store.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're looking for a scarf, now is the time. As we've said already a couple times, falls are coming, so you can get the thicker scarf to keep you warm.
Someone told Jose Mourinho.
Yeah.
Second Mourinho dig.
That's terrible. But maybe a scarf would have at least softened the blow. But we've got the Women's World Cup coming up. We've got more meaningful friendlies for the U.S. national team, theoretically meaningful friendlies.
Oh, yeah, so get your U.S. soccer scarves.
You get a scarf for them. MLS playoffs are around the corner. If you want to hop on a bandwagon team, say, for example, DC United, there are scarves available there.
If you've been a reluctant DC United fan, but you're thinking, I might go to a playoff game if they actually get one, get yourself a scarf, a DC United scarf.
I think you're talking about me here, and that's accurate.
I didn't point any fingers.
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah, so you could do that. If you want to support your local USL franchise, they're the official scarf provider of USL.
They sure are.
And as we've said several times, they're also the official scarf provider of the NCAA. So if you want to support your alma mater, your college team, your local college team, they've got you covered there too.
You missed one. They're the official scarf provider of the Total Soccer Show. There is the TSS scarf with hello and welcome on one side is available at roughneckscarves.com.
It sure is.
So we'll put a link to that scarf in the show notes.
Okay.
But you can also find other scarves.
Right.
And if you want 20% off any scarf you see at roughneckscarves.com, the discount code is Mr. Rockwell. You should know it by now.
I believe TSS?
No, it's Total Soccer Show, all one word. Total
all
Soccer Show, if you want it to be.
Intermittent case. One capital, then lowercase, then one capital?
I think they all work. I really do. I think caps doesn't matter. But remember, it's Total Soccer Show, all one word.
Soccer, one word.
I might be looking for new partners. Thank you to Roughneck Scarves for sponsoring today's show.
Indeed. Thank you to Adam Ulrich for our next question, which I will be asking because it's specifically aimed at Daryl Grove.
All right, let's do it.
Daryl has often mentioned the need to have center backs play on the side of their dominant foot. Is this for distribution, or is there more to it? Adam would think having right-footed players defending right-footed attacker or left-footed attackers, I guess, makes sense, and vice versa. So why do you feel this way, Daryl Grove?
So to finish Adam's question, he says he thinks that would be best because a defender could steer an attacker to their weaker foot. I think the first thing to remember is when you play defence, you can't have a preferred tackling foot because then you're going to get burned, right? I mean, I play defence a lot. You've got to be prepared to tackle with both feet. So it's absolutely not it's not about that.
No, but to his point, if you know a player is all right-footed and they're always going to try to shoot with their right foot, if you're left foot dominant, doesn't that make sense?
If you know a player's all right-footed, you just get them on their left foot as much as you can. No matter what footage you are, you've got to make that decision and get them on their left foot, right?
All right. I think I take his point, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think it does make sense that then you might feel just a little bit more confident to step across and try to win that ball. I know that when it's my non-dominant foot, my left foot, sometimes I'm just a little less confident going into a tackle with that foot. Yeah, I think
that's interesting. I would argue, we don't have to solve this tonight, but I would argue that professional defenders can tackle with both feet.
I mean, first of all, shots fired at me. That's hurtful, but fair.
Because you couldn't defend them.
But I will say, to the distribution point...
Yeah, that's the reason I say it's distribution.
I would agree with you, and I know it wasn't a center back. It was Adam Lehigh last night.
Eric Lehigh?
Ooh, boy. Adam Ulrich's on my brain.
Yeah.
Eric Lehigh. He had the two miscontrols that Timothy Weah had inside the first 8 minutes. Maybe Weah could have done better, but I think you spotted a big part of this is that Lehigh was playing that with his right foot.
Yep.
So he kept having to switch it over to play it with his right, and he basically played it behind Timothy Weah at that point.
Yep.
If he had been left-footed, he could just play it right down the line.
That was the problem with a right-footed left back. And if you can picture this, if you hit a ball right-footed to your left, if you use your instep, use the side of your foot, it's going to bend towards the sideline, right? That's why it ended up slightly behind Tim Weah twice so that he couldn't quite get it correctly. If you're left-footed, it bends towards and then away, so you stop it going out of bounds. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why having your dominant foot on your side of the field is important.
Yes, and I know that we're looking at this from the professional standpoint, so maybe what I'm about to say doesn't apply quite as much, but it is the old adage that you don't want to lose the ball in the middle of the field. And it's worth noting that if Daryl is a left center back and he's left-footed, if he wants to boot that ball up the field, he can take a touch wide, and then even if he gets put under pressure and loses it, he's lost the ball wider. Whereas if he has to cut it back and then hit it with his right foot, decent chance you can get it poked away or you can get tackled, and then you've lost it in the middle.
That's the most important thing, is that when the space is always to the outside. Almost always the space is to the outside, right? People try to show you outside. So if you're a left-footed centre-back, you can take a space a little farther outside and then hit it, right? If you take a space inside, you're stepping into trouble. It's not like, it doesn't have to be. You can have two right-footed centre-backs, but it's preferable to have a left-footed left centre-back, right-footed right centre-back if possible.
I would say I agree with you mostly. I would say it's not even preferable for me, but with that said, if I do see left-footed left center back, I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then especially if you've got John Brooks and Matt Miazga, one's right-footed, one's left-footed, it's obvious you should play Brooks on the left and Miazga on the right, right? There's no reason to ever switch those two around. Same when it was Beasler and Omar Gonzalez. Beasler on the left, Gonzalez on the right.
Yeah, Miazga did all right at left center back. Just throwing that out
there.
He
did, but that's what I'm saying. He can do that, but when he's got a left-footed centre-back with him, then Miazga goes right and the left footer goes left.
Counterpoint. Did the United States concede any goals when Matt Miazga played on the left?
Counterpoint. Did he play against Mexico's U23 team or the senior Brazil team?
Your Honor, I'm asking the questions here. And
I'm not the one on trial here. Should we go to the last question?
I suppose we should.
Today's
Since
final
you refuse to exist within my courtroom.
This whole thing's out of order. The final question comes from Ryan LaRose. Ryan wants to know, what is the style or formation being used right now by only one or a few teams that could eventually become really popular and be copied by a lot of teams?
Yep. And my answer is not going to be helpful because I'm going to say I don't know. Because it really is, that's my honest answer, and then I'll explain more.
Right.
But it's basically because right now I don't think I watch enough teams that are being forced to do different things. It's why I said, I think at the beginning of last season, but I'm going to reiterate it this time, it's why I want to watch more Europa League, for example, is because I think
it's where all the weird tactics are.
Yeah, there's more license to experiment, and there's more, and I do think tournament play lends itself to systems, and that's when systems gain prominence. When, this counterattack approach worked against Barcelona, other teams are going to emulate it. This high-pressure system worked against whomever. Let's try that. I think that's when they become more prominent. And I think right now, basically, you've got a few things that are predominant, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head that is particularly groundbreaking that's going to be picked up by other clubs right now.
Okay. My answer, weirdly, is the Wolves formation.
Okay.
It's not groundbreaking necessarily, but I think the fluidity of it is at least different to what you normally see in the Premier League. And for those who haven't seen Wolves this year, they will defend in very much a 5-4-1.
Who do you support, by the way?
Southampton.
Okay.
Very much a 5-4-1 with everybody behind the ball, 4 midfielders in front of 5 defenders, right? It looks very defensive. But then when they get the ball, it spreads out.
My stomach agrees with you.
It spreads out into a very attacking 3-4-3 where the fullbacks get high and then the 2 of the wide midfielders from the 4 go and essentially join the centre forward, so they're a front 3. And I don't think you see many teams doing that much transition from really organised defending to much more let's push up the field as soon as we get the ball. So I think that might be a formation that has some legs and other teams could adopt. It was enough to get a draw against Man City, for example.
That's totally fair. Totally fair. I think my hesitation with answering this question comes about because we had this maybe 2 years ago, a similar question about when will the 4-2-3-1 go out of style, because it seems like everyone is playing it. And I think we answered it, and then 3 months later is when the 3-4-2-1 exploded onto the scene.
Oh, like Chelsea style.
Yeah, and so to give an actual answer, sort of, because I'm still not going to tell you a team, but I will say that I think the way tactics evolve is that they evolve in relation to that which is dominant and successful.
Yeah, because you've got to find a way to combat it.
Yeah, and so my answer is basically whichever team can most successfully find a way to play against a high press, that's the system that's going to become dominant. That's my answer. And I would say, with that in mind, when you're looking
it's going to be some horrible everybody behind the ball thing.
I think it's even worse than that. Basically, what I would advise people to do is don't think about the numbers in terms of a formation because it's all been done. So if you're like, what about I really did do this. I drew it out. I was like, what about a 3-3-1-3? I was going through, and it really... It's kind of meaning this because if you come up with this elaborate formation and then you look at it on a piece of paper, as I did, I was trying to play around with some stuff. I made a 3-5-2. That's what you're doing because that's
you just squint a bit and you're like, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so what I think it is, it's about setting a team up to basically successfully defend and attack an opponent that's doing something very successfully. So how do you defeat Liverpool? How do you defeat Man City? The people who can basically do that in the most replicable fashion, that's what I think catches on next. It's ball-playing center back who can play the ball long to a big target striker, so you bypass all of that press, and even if Liverpool win the ball back...
1980s?
That's kind of where I think we're going. And honestly...
It worked for Wimbledon in the FA Cup final.
The thing that kind of blew my mind, because I had not thought about this, is that with that in mind... Jose Mourinho's pursuit of Jerome Boateng makes that much more sense.
Oh, so you can up Boateng to Lukaku?
Yeah, basically, because it's how you bypass that pressure. And the idea that Liverpool want to win the ball back as high up the field as possible, even if you're hoofing it long and you lose it around their 18, they still got to build from their 18 as opposed to your 18.
Yeah.
So I feel like those kind of responses to that which is prominent, that's the next tactical trend.
Ooh, how about just having Lindelof get really panicky on the ball?
Perfect. What could go wrong? What could go wrong?
Thank you to everybody who asked us a question today. That's Zach, Dorian, Elena, Ed, Adam, and Ryan. If you would like to ask us a question, it's totalsoccershow.com/questions. I'll put the link in the show notes if you want to ask a question.
And I will add this. I would love for people to tweet at us or tweet at me or send me or us emails because I do want to know what people think is an interesting team. Like this team in...
Tactically?
Yeah, Bundesliga 2, they're trying this thing. I mean, that's like you look at Jurgen Klopp, he came from Mainz before Dortmund and he tried the high press with Mainz and that's what got him the Dortmund job. So I'm always interested to hear about innovative approaches from managers that maybe we haven't heard of or clubs that we've only vaguely heard of.
Yeah.
So if people have some ideas, I would happily hear them.
Yeah, same. Don't just send this to Taylor. Copy me on that as well.
Maybe just send them to me. It's
get
fine.
Me in on that.
And then I can claim them and act like I'm super knowledgeable.
I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say that if you subscribe to the Total Soccer Show at $10 a month or more, we guarantee to answer one question per month when we do the listener question special.
And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't add we sure do.
We sure do. You go to totalsoccershow.com/join if you want to subscribe at $10 a month or more. Also, in case this has just gone off in anyone's head, we do not answer only $10 questions. We always make sure to mix it up, and you can't tell which are which.
You sure can't. And I wanted to add one more time that promo promo code from before is soccer.
Roughnecks are going to come after you. They've got the tools to strangle you.
That's troubling.
Roughneckscarves.com. Discount code is Total Soccer Show, all one word. Taylor Rockwell, before you say anything else, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Dismissed.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We don't know when we'll be back again. It really does depend on exactly what happens with the weather, but hopefully it's soon. And if you're in the path of it, please stay safe.
Indeed. And now's the time when Daryl stands up so that I can exit the recording studio.